Good morning. The board has been in executive session prior to now. We've just come out of executive session. There's no action to be taken on anything that was discussed at executive session. So at this stage, we will move to ratify the approval of the board meetings from the March 19 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? We have a motion, a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, the next thing is remarks. Since we're following so closely on the annual meeting when remarks are made, I'm not going to have a whole lot of remarks. But I do want to remind everybody in our community, to stay informed of what's going on and what CSA is doing. It is important that you attend board meetings or watch a video of it later. That's part of our media, our process of getting information to our community. There's going to be a lot of information presented at today's meeting. There are going to be a lot of task force reports, questions that will be answered if you listen to those. You need to read the weekly newsletter. You need to click on the links on that letter. And particularly at this meeting, there's going to be a report by the task force to update traffic issues, overall congestion at the south end of the island. The circle is the main egress and ingress for the sea pines, but it does not just serve sea pines. It is truly a circle for the south end of the island. The task force update is also going to talk about temporary signage as cars approach the gate to try to help get cars into the correct lane sooner. We'll give you a status report on that. And then there may be a preliminary status report on some possible uses of technology, which we're just starting to explore. We're not far into that, but we're trying to explore some technology that might may speed up the process of going through the gate. The task force on banning gas-powered blowers and investigating that, there'll be a report on that. Our communications task force, which has a job of developing presentation on individual topics of interest to our community in depth to give a detailed report to the community on single purpose things one at a time. And do several of these over a period of time. So if you want to be informed, please listen to these reports. It's our intent to give you as much information as we can. We don't know every bit of information that everybody wants, but the purpose is to give you the information which we think is of general interest. For your information, we're still waiting for the Federal Appeals Court to render a decision on the referendum appeal case. And as I've said repeatedly, that decision could come any minute, any day, any week, any month, hopefully not any year. We're coming to the business time of our season. The season is here. Getting in and out of sea pines and that gate will take longer. Just give yourself an extra few minutes. I know we all like to keep moving, no matter how far we travel. We would just as soon go way out of our distance if we could continue to move to get to the same point. It's a human trait. I suffer it. My wife suffers it to even a greater degree, but it's here and we have to deal with it until we can get something worked out. So I understand that frustration and so forth, but let's please, be as tolerant as can, cope with it to the extent we can. To prove our traffic issues at the south end of the island is a very complicated thing. You're going to hear the reports on this, but understand in developing this, we have to be involved with the state, who owns all of the roads other than from Greenwood Drive, from the circle to the gate. The state owns those. The town manages those, and the county helps finance those. So if you're talking about a convoluted system and something complex and trying to come up with a time schedule to get each of these people to, do something in a coordinated method is very difficult. Some of you asked, what is our schedule? We can give you what our schedule is, and you're going to hear that later on. But it is complicated, and it's the reason we have a task force and the reason we're meeting with all of these entities, which you'll hear about during the reports. Okay, so let's talk about alligators for a second. You've heard, and if you've read the paper this morning, you heard talk about alligators, and we've had 2 instances in which alligators have attacked dogs. One's in the forest reserve, one is a lagoon off a plantation. Both of those alligators have been taken out, and please follow all of the guidelines and precautions to avoid any type of interaction with alligators. Don't get close to the lagoons. Keep your small children away. I mean, if they get a 50-pound dog, they certainly will get a 20-pound kid. So please, everybody, if you have guests, visitors, family, make them aware of the existence of alligators and the risk. We publish information regularly concerning alligators and the risk of alligators and the dangers of alligators and the care and cautions you should take. We furnish rental agents that information so they can give to the visitors ahead of time. We're trying to do everything we can to keep people informed and alert to the dangers. Now, we have a good life in Sea Pines, and I consider it the premier community in South Carolina. There's no other community which offers everything that exists in Sea Pines as a whole. We're basically a small town within a town. And, you know, it's a special and unique place. It's not a golf community as such. We have businesses, commercial interests. We have right outside the gate. We have multitude of things we can do. And in fact, there are days that many of us do not have to go any further than a half a mile outside our gate to do everything that we need to do and to satisfy our purchases for food, drugs, or whatever. Drugs being licensed to us, by the way. With that, I will end these remarks, and I'll then call on the president to see if he has any remarks. Sam?
The only additional remark I would make is during Victoria Shanahan's presentation, we're also going to give an update on our short-term rental program and the expenses and the where the revenue and expenses are for the last couple of years. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're reminding everybody of that. And then just to look forward to interjecting a few comments as we move through the meeting. Joe Count, our chief of security, is out this week with a family event. And so I'll be trying to fill in for his shoes and provide some security information as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll go down management reports. The first one is communications. Stephanie?
Good morning, everyone. I have just a few updates and reminders from the communications department. In April, we launched the new Welcome to Sea Pines CSA new member guide, which is tailored specifically and distributed to all new residential property owners. It provides an overview of Sea Pines CSA's history and services, essential utility contacts, wildlife safety, and community amenities. The new member guide was also shared recently in a community update email. So if you missed it, though, you can find it on our website at seapinesliving.com/welcome. And then earlier this month, we held our annual meeting. If you were unable to attend and have not had a chance to watch the meeting video, it has been posted on our website at seapinesliving.com/annual meeting. On this webpage, you will also see our 2023 annual report. I highly recommend taking the time to review it, as this year we've incorporated operational reports in addition to the annual financial reports. I also want to announce that board of director applications for this year's application will be available soon and shared with the community in our weekly community update email, in addition to being posted on our website. We will have 3 Class A residential board seats and 1 Class B commercial board seat available beginning January 1st, 2025. Please be sure to keep an eye on your email for these election and application communications. As Chair has mentioned with alligators, we're heading into summer, so I do want to remind the community that our wildlife, in addition to alligators, becomes more active during our warmer months. So we have a wildlife information and resource page on our website at seapinesliving.com/wildlife. On this page, you'll find wildlife information, guides, a video, and safety tips. In addition, we regularly share wildlife information in our weekly community updates that are sent to our property owners as well as our rental management companies. Please be sure to share these resources with your family members, your guests, and your renters. To report a wildlife concern, please contact Sea Pines Security at 843-671-7170. That concludes my update for today, but I'm happy to take any questions you all may have.
Does anybody have questions for Stephanie? Jim?
Yeah, not a question. I just want to and we'll get to it a little bit on the communication task force. But the new homeowner guide that Stephanie and the team has put together is really an exceptional document. And for all of us to really understand the origins of CSA, the goalposts of what is the operating company called CSA, the span of control, the history, it's a really worthwhile document. I really encourage dissemination of it to the extent we can, both in print and clearly the online accesses. It's a very well done document that I think sets the tone and the stage for who we are and what we do.
Thank you. And it is available, so please go to the link. You've highlighted that at least once or twice, I think, Stephanie, in your newsletter.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yes, it was
Yeah.
shared recently, and you can also find it on our property owners page on our website.
And let me encourage anybody who is interested in getting involved with CSA, fill out an application for the board. It's an opportunity for you to be involved. And, you'll be devoting your time to your community, and it serves a lot of purpose. And we need people with different viewpoints, and so we are looking for applicants, and we're encouraging anyone who's interested to get involved, file an application. That's the way to get involved to the maximum extent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, thank you, Stephanie. Next, I'll move to the community infrastructure report. Russell?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'll be brief this morning, as I know we have a long agenda and many items to go through. Before getting into my comments regarding our projects, infrastructure projects, I just want to again underscore and thank the property owners along Sea Pines Drive that were directly impacted through our construction process, and really thank them for their patience and understanding as we work through the restoration of along Sea Pines Drive from Baynard Cove down to Gadwell Road. So again, their patience, understanding, and cooperation has been really appreciated. So without further say on that, I do want to turn to a brief PowerPoint presentation that we have this morning, and would ask my colleague Victoria to help me just run through a couple quick slides here this morning. Thank you, Victoria. Can everyone see that? Again, starting with Sea Pines Drive, as we go back in time, we know that we've come all the way from the Ocean Gate to Lighthouse Road, from Lighthouse Road to Baynard, and now we'll be making our way from Baynard Cove to Land's End. The current phase of work left off on Gadwell Road, but we'll be resuming construction here in the fall after Labor Day, and that will continue from Labor Day right through the off season, if you will, and into the early spring. Land's End. This also includes substantial stormwater drainage improvements, roadway, and leisure trail, as the previous phases have done. There are some minor realignments of the leisure trail and road that we'll be executing in this phase of work. So again, we'll need all the patience and cooperation for this final phase of Sea Pines Drive for this fall. So excited to bring all this work on Sea Pines Drive to fruition here in the near term. If we go to the next slide. So Harbortown construction, which I've mentioned previously, we're going to be breaking up the Harbortown construction into a couple different phases due to a variety of factors in Harbortown, but we will be starting this fall with Lighthouse Lane from Lighthouse Road to Mizumas Lane, and then there'll be subsequent phases announced as we progress through the work. Again, this also includes substantial stormwater construction, roadway improvements, roadway resurfacing in Harbortown. This is some of the oldest infrastructure in the community, dating back to the late 1950s. And as I mentioned previously, a lot of the drainage pipes are what we refer to as a corrugated metal pipe, and most of that is in substantial decline in the Harbortown area and desperate need of replacing. So we'll be working on all that again, starting after Labor Day right through the new year in the Harbor Town. So excited to get that project going and kicking that off. Thank you, Victoria. I have a couple other brief comments to make this morning, and then I'll take a couple questions. Other planned projects are the Marsh Island Vehicular Bridge, which will be getting repairs after Memorial Day sometime. That will take us about 4 to 6 weeks to complete. And then also mentioning the South Allen PSD projects. They are currently working in lot 2 and progressing to lot 1 with the installation of the water line. Also to note, many of us have seen on Cordillo Parkway, there's a substantial water line being installed out there as well. And that's to further help water services boost pressure and volume in those neighborhoods and over to the shipyard community. Those are my comments this morning, Mr. Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Can I add a couple of things?
Yes.
As Russell said, and I really want to thank Russell and emphasize this. As we work through the Sea Pines Drive project, we've had to make adjustments in the field in terms of the timing of that project. We thought we'd be further along. We thought we'd do it in 3 phases. It's turned into 4 phases. And the reason for that was as we get into this and discover just how bad the drainage system is and how much work is required to work around existing utilities to keep the lights and the water on while allowing traffic to flow through. It's just taking more time than we've initially anticipated. We learn as we go on this. And so when we get through this last phase of Sea Pines Drive, we know going into the Harbor Town project, Lighthouse Lane and Mizzen Mast, we had thought we could do that project in sort of two working seasons for us, but we're going to break that down probably into four projects just because of the volume of work that's going to need to be done and the impact it will have on those neighborhoods. So I think it's important that we make sure the community understands that. We've got such a limited time frame to work in those areas because of the volume of traffic there and the interaction of the neighborhood and folks coming in and out of their homes. So it's going to take longer than we anticipated to do these things than we thought 3 or 4 years ago. But Russell has done a fantastic job in making this happen. I look forward to moving into Harbor Town and getting that done. And I think Jared Mays is going to talk just a bit about this, but we've seen significant improvements in terms of the lack of calls for service in the areas where we've made the improvements in regards to flooding and those kind of things. When we have a storm of what we had in the last couple of days, it used to be we would get 20, 30 calls for flooding and issues related to storm drainage. Now we're getting 1. We may get 2 calls for a tree or limbs down. So the work that's progressing is doing what we said it would do, and that's important for the community to know that. And I'm certainly know the people living on the streets that have been impacted by the work. As Russell said, we appreciate their patience, but they're also being able to see the benefits of that work in tangible ways when we have these significant rainstorms like we've had over the last couple of days. So again, thanks to Russell, and we will go into more detail in the coming months once we've laid the Lighthouse Lane and Mizzen Mast projects out in a more succinct way so the community understands just how we're going to break those down.
Thank you, Sam.
And Dave,
Go ahead.
I just kind of want to make another affirming comment that when we look back and we think that 88% of our community, when we put this original plan together to say we needed a new assessment, we needed to move it, and all of us, 88% of us said, yeah, we understand that. Could you imagine if we hadn't passed that, if we hadn't been making these investments? Because every time we get a report, we keep hearing as we're moving in, like, for example, the Harbor Town area, 1950 drainage systems, and your comment about flooding and all that. I just think as a community, we should celebrate the fact that we took a leadership position. 88% of us agreed with it. And here we are, so much better off than we were years ago. So I think it's kudos to the community's support and to the staff making this happen.
Thank you. I want to add to that because as I'm out and about at social events or other events and things, people stop me and talk about various things. And one of the things is that the work that's being done, well, people in the area are inconvenienced. this has been, got a great support from the community as it goes along. It's very important to them, and they stop and tell me that. And I judge how it's going, by the type of comments I get. And they've basically been all affirmative and positive comments on the work being done, and appreciated that it is an important thing that we are doing. So I just echo that, so hopefully you're getting some of the same indications from people when they talk with you. Anybody else? Is that Don, are you raising your hand or you doing something else? Okay. All right, we'll go on to the next topic, which is community maintenance. Jared, you there? There you are.
Yep, everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I just had a quick presentation, just kind of give you all a little update on some of our maintenance operations. So I'm going to share the screen here real quick. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to highlight that our yearly beach walk tree trimming has been completed. Our contractor goes and they trim any hazardous dead limbs, prune our palm trees, and they inspect trees and remove them as needed. Which is important because there's a lot of stuff that we don't see just casually walking by. So to have an actual certified arborist go down each one and lay eyes on it, they're really looking for any defects or anything that may be hazardous. So it just gives us a little peace of mind with the thousands of visitors a day that go down these beach walks. As you see in the weekly newsletter, our contractor is currently working on a leisure trail on Plantation Drive, doing some trimming there. They should be done actually probably this afternoon or tomorrow. Then they're going to be working their way on Greenwood Drive from Plantation towards the Greenwood Gate. And I mentioned this in our maintenance committee meeting last week. Algae blooms are a result of excess nutrients and stormwater runoff, coinciding with lots of sunlight, warm temperatures, and shallow, slow flowing water, which is almost every single lagoon in sea pines. So it's just that time of year where it's warming up and the temperatures are changing, and algae and duckweed and other aquatic vegetation is starting to bloom. As you can see in this photo, that's our staff member Mason Ford treating an algae bloom on Greenwood Drive. And just to put in perspective, some of you may not know this, but CSA manages over 89 surface acres of stormwater retention ponds in sea pines. So as you can imagine, it's quite an undertaking. And, overall, we do a fair job keeping up with them. Mason's very proactive with his spraying schedule. Some of these things multiply quickly, but what you guys see out there may take a day or two to die. But most of the time we get the calls and they've already been sprayed, and it's just the in-between time where we're waiting for the products to work on them. Also want to make note, our roadside sign painting has been completed. You can see two of our staff members, Hayden Parks and Trey Harrison, painting signs on Lighthouse Road. And due to improved efficiencies, we are able to fix and paint signs on site, which means we can get a lot more of them done faster. The guys actually kind of keep some parts in their truck that they can go out and paint it. And if there's a louver that's broken or a backer board that's broken, they can just go ahead and change them right there. And then we continue to clean them throughout the year as needed, but putting a fresh coat of paint on them really makes a big difference. Our mosquito program, we actually started that on May 6th. So I think 3 Mondays ago. And just a reminder, the application is conducted overnight and in select areas managed by CSA. We do get some calls saying, oh, the truck hasn't came down our street. I just wanted to reiterate that it is done at night and sometimes 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And we got a new machine, I think 2 years ago. And it's a lot quieter than the one we've had in the past. So if we go down your street and we don't wake you up and we're spraying mosquitoes, we're doing the right thing. So just want to let everybody know that we are doing that as well. Applications are applied as needed throughout the season, and just keep an eye out for the weekly newsletter to stay up to date on the treatment schedule. And then our stormwater division, I think this was a pretty good picture, just kind of outline what we're doing. This is staff members Brandon Grant and Jacoby Grant. They're line jetting a stormwater drainage pipe on Plantation Drive in Calabogie. We've talked about in the past, the yellow machine you see is called a Vactron. So it actually has a line jetting device which is essentially a very high pressure hose that goes into the stormwater pipe, pulls all of that debris back to the catch basin, and then the black hose that they're holding goes into the catch basin and sucks all the debris out. So instead of moving sediment in the system, we're actually removing it, which is helping everything flow better. And I did want to mention, kind of piggyback off what Sam said. So over the weekend, we had approximately 2.5 inches of rain, and we did only receive one work order for stormwater. And I want to mention probably, 3 years ago or so, we were getting at least 15 to 20 just on a normal rainfall. So, not to mention we're dealing with the trees and the rain, but we had staff kind of running all over the place trying to correct these problems as the training. But the work that Russell has put in, and the engineers and the contractors and the board and CSA staff has really paid off for our department. And I wanted to reiterate too, yes, they may have been behind the schedule a little bit, but they did it the right way. And personally, I find that to be the most important, especially from our department, is, yes, it may have been inconvenience for 2 or 3 more weeks, but we have however many years moving forward that the system's going to work, and it's going to work properly. And I want to send a thank you to Russell, because it's making my job a little bit easier when these storms are coming. So we're seeing huge returns on the investments they put into that. I'll give a quick update on the community standards. Just throw some numbers out there. So far this year, we've done approximately 850 violations, and only 4% of those have been escalated from an initial courtesy notice. I think that was 35 that we had to escalate, which again is a low number considering people are just getting these and, oh, okay, I didn't realize this, and they're fixing the problem and just making sea pines beautiful. Just to throw some numbers out, approximately 40% of the violations are landscaping related, which could be ground cover, mowing, or weeding beds. Approximately 21% are maintenance related, which would be like roof debris, power washing, or just general home maintenance. 9% are unsightly, which could just be like beach items left out, sporting equipment left out, or just general items in view. And 6% are architectural, which could be a structural alteration without ARB approval. And approximately 6% is just rubbish and debris. So it's kind of more concentrated in landscaping and maintenance related. That's where we get a majority of our issues. But a lot of those people are just turning around so quick that we're putting them in and then they're closing them out a week or so after. So that is everything I have for y'all. Just wanted to share those. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Can I add a couple of things first?
Yes, go ahead, Sam.
Gary, just one thing. So I want to just compliment Jared. And just, he mentioned this, but Russell and Jared's work is really complementing each other, and it's paying dividends outside of the maintenance piece, because when Russell's team doesn't have to spend 2 or 3 or 4 days cleaning up after a storm, they can continue to do other things that make the community look better and improve. And I hope, and I guess because I'm paid to do it, but I see it every day. I can see over the course of the last 18 months how much better the community looks, because Jared's team has more time to spend in the community working on things versus going back reactively and cleaning up after these storm events. And so these two things complement each other. They go hand in glove, and it just adds a lot of value to us as a community to fix these problems, so our day-to-day staff can be doing the things that we want them to do from a quality of life perspective. And then the other piece I'll say is Jared on the land use management rules has been doing a great job. We've changed the approach on the first sort of notification. It used to be a violation. So here's your violation notice, but it really now is just a courtesy letter. And we say, and as Jared mentioned, we're getting 94, 95% compliance with that. And the goal is our goal is not to be a hammer to a property owner. It's to be just an encourager. And we're looking for compliance, and Jared and his team do a very good job of that. On occasion, we have property owners who don't appreciate the letter, and I understand that. And we work with that and we work through it. But I just want to tell Jared and his team, thank you for what they're doing. And just again, remind the board that these things do work together, and they perpetuate, and they add value, and they build value on top of each other. I'm sorry, Karen, I interrupted you.
No
worries.
I just wanted to know, Jared, I believe this was your project on the road from Greenwood to Sea Pines Drive and maybe Greenwood Extension or something, that you cleaned out that lagoon
Yes.
right there, and it's kind of beside the 14th green of Atlantic Dunes. And but it's an example of what needs to be done throughout this community on so many of our lagoons that are so heavily silted in. But what you did there, removing that silt and doing it and disposing of it was really, really good. And I don't know how many people see it, but it's very, very noticeable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate it. And that's something I'll provide more follow-up, probably the next meeting or the one after. We're going to be doing a lot more work of that come the fall after tourist season. It kind of slows down a little bit. But definitely appreciate you noticing that. Thank you.
Well, let me add on to that, because I think this is going on throughout the community. Things that everybody you presented and management teams have presented, they're working. It takes a while to get everything going. Sam Bennett and has gotten things going with all of the crews. We see things happening that are basic things, but these are the basic things that enhance the life of the community and Sea Pines, the residents, the property owners, and everything else. So we've had time to spend on this, and it's showing positive results. And I hope our community shares that viewpoint. But it appears so from various sources. But it's all because of the work y'all do, Sam, you and your staff. So I just want to express appreciation for that.
I do want to say a couple more things about the work Jared and Russell and Doug Cook, who works for Jared, have been doing with the town of Hilton Head as it relates to stormwater preparation. And particularly, we're only 10 days away from hurricane season, start hurricane season. So June 1 is here. Jared and his team have done a great job working with the town to make sure that all our control structures are in the best shape they can be. The control structures are the pieces of equipment at the heads of the lagoons that face the Calabogie Sound that control the water coming in and out of our community. A number of those have been in a less than proper state. Jared has worked with the town to try and get most of those improved. We still got some that need improvement, but those really fall under the domain of the town. But Jared and his team have done a great job bringing those as into compliance as best they can. And then in addition to that, we've got the Lawton Canal Pump Station, which is just next door to the CSA building, which drains about half the community. Is in the first time, and since I've been here in the last 4.5 years, is fully functioning, with all three of the major pumps being reconditioned and new pumps. And that's due to the work of Jared working with the town of Hilton Head. And so I'm very comfortable that that station can handle what we may see during the season. So I just wanted to mention those things and tell Jared and the community that we're ready, as ready as we can be. And hopefully it's all for naught, but they've done a great job of bringing those structures and that pump station back to where it needs to be.
Yeah, fingers crossed we don't need that stuff, but we're here if we need it. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? We'll move to the next topic in finance and administration. Victoria.
Good morning, thank you. As we mentioned at the annual meeting a couple weeks ago, we just had our annual audit completed. We had a completely clean opinion. There was no suggested changes, no adjustments. They were very complimentary of our oversight as well as our internal controls. For the 2024 collections, back in March, we were about 86% collected. Then in the beginning of April, we suspended guest pass privileges for those residential property owners that hadn't paid. It seems to work very well and it gets their attention. And I just checked it this morning and we're at 96% collected. So thank you to everyone who's paid their assessments timely. And as well as invoices, just last week, we billed out the 2024 rental registration invoices. Those will be due on July 1st. And Sam and I wanted to share a little presentation that we put together that has to do with what the town collects versus what we collect on our rental registration programs, so I'm gonna share my.
And well, then before you do that, Victoria, let me just say a couple words about that.
Okay,
Because I think it's important for the board and the community to understand where the dollars are going that CSA is collecting. Because if take everybody back about 2.5, 3 years, when we really began to look at the needs of the community, whether it was in terms of our staffing needs, our security side, our critical infrastructure needs at the gate, all of those things were put together in what we called our revenue task force. And Chairman Moshin led that at the time. And we came up with a number of things that we thought we needed to do to make sure that Sea Pines was moving ahead and that the needs of the community were being met. And we adopted several of those. And one of those was the critical infrastructure, which we talked about a bit this morning. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that in the future and where those dollars have gone and giving a community a sort of similar layout of what we're doing here this morning with short-term rental revenues. But the other piece that we discovered that we needed to address was really the differential between what had happened with our short-term rental programs and 7 years ago now, 2017 to 2021. We saw about a 68% increase in short-term rentals, and we really saw an increase of calls for service for short-term rentals that pretty much paralleled that increase associated with the increase in the number of short-term rentals. And this is not a reflection of short-term rentals. They're a reality of life here in Sea Pines. That Sea Pines has been a rental community since the day it was founded. That was one of the things that Charles Frazier envisioned, was folks that own property in Sea Pines having the ability to rent that property if they wanted to do so. What was really not expected, I don't think the community expected, and this predates me, was just the volume of short-term rentals that we would see moving ahead. And so, unfortunately for us, as the calls for service for short-term rentals went up, we didn't have the additional personnel to answer those calls for service. Our personnel really stayed flat from a security perspective for the last 10 years prior to that. There were no additional security officers available to answer the calls for service. And so as we did the analysis of where the calls for service were coming from, it really became clear to us that the short-term rentals were driving the preponderance of the calls for service. In addition to that, we also realized a couple of other things, is that we were having significant challenges retaining qualified security officers in this community because of our pay scale, our wage scale. And when I talk about security officers, I'm really talking about two things. I'm talking about our sworn law enforcement officers who have the same responsibilities as a sheriff's deputy inside the gates of Sea Pines. They have arrest powers, that can make traffic stops, that answer the criminal calls in nature, whether it's a speeder or whether it's a domestic violence, when we get all of those. The other side of that is our security officers will be our gate officers. They are really the first line of defense, so to speak, for CSA and for our community. And so we're at the end of the line, and we were not appropriately compensating our employees in those fields if we wanted to keep good folks on staff. And we were really bleeding officers. Our attrition rate was terrible. And so we recognized that in order to change that and to keep officers, we needed to raise the wage scale. And we also needed to add additional officers to handle the increase for the calls of volume of service. And so that's really what was the genesis of us making the determination that a short-term rental program and a fee associated with short-term rentals made sense, because we could apply those two things to the short-term rental calls for service, increase the level of officers that handle those additional calls for service. And by the way, we wanted to make sure that we could have the best folks available in those roles and those positions, because they're doing law enforcement, but they're also doing customer service. And that is something that we try to emphasize. We want good people interacting with our property owners, with our guests. I shouldn't say good, we want the best that we can get to do that. And so the last variable of that was, in addition to that, the board adopted a series of additional land use management rules that are not necessarily criminal in nature, but they are quality of life in nature related specifically to sea pines. And so those rules need to be administered by someone. And so, and then a lot of those rules apply directly to short-term rentals and to our visitors coming in here. And so we've used the short-term rental program to help us to add additional staff and resources to cover those rules. So that's how we got this program started. And then I will have Victoria go through where we were and what the town has done, and then where we are right now in terms of the dollars that have been spent. And before we do that, though, I'm happy to answer any questions the board members may have about that. I know that a number of the board members weren't involved in that previously.
Any comments, questions from the board? Okay, Victoria, then why don't you go ahead and proceed?
Thanks.
Right? Okay, so we submitted a Freedom of Information request to the town of Hilton Head because their program is underway now. And we wanted the lists of the properties that were registered with the town that were within Sea Pines. And so when we first got the request back, we have 2,153 properties on our program, and they say that there's 1,621. That's a difference of 532. However, the town's definition of a rental and our definition is different. One is we include all of our long-term leases. We also include all the timeshares within Sea Pines because all of them get rented at some point during the year. So if you take those numbers out, we're now at a difference of 136, meaning we have 136 more properties on our program than the town does. So we did a deep dive into those properties. What's really interesting is 132 of those properties got billed for their rental registration fee and they paid it. There was 10 that haven't paid their rental registration fee, but they haven't paid their assessment either. There was 22 that were actually new to the program, so they didn't get invoiced last year because they either weren't being rented or the property turned over or they just joined the program. And finally, there was just 4 that we found that are definitely on the internet and available to book, but they haven't paid the fee. Then there was 32 that were on the town's list that weren't on our list, that now they are on our list. So we started with 2,000, we now have 2,185 properties in our program. We have 5 bedrooms, 3 to 4 bedrooms, and 1 to 2 bedrooms. So we potential revenue of over 1.2. Our budgeted just over $1 million, so we stand to collect 146,000 more than we had budgeted for. Now that's talking about where the money's coming from. Let's talk about where it was going. Start here with this first column, 2022. We didn't collect the fee in that year, but we did start spending it.
And let me correct you. And that's a very important point, because if everybody goes back to 2022, you will remember the challenges of staffing that we were having with our security officers and our gate officers. And we had to step in and stop that so that we could maintain our security and our law enforcement forces. So we started spending these dollars. Once we knew the program was going to move ahead, we went ahead and started spending the dollars that we needed to keep the staff in place and start to hire the best folks we could hire for our law enforcement and gate officers.
And it's important to mention that the board passed the resolution in May of 2022. and it was understanding that it wouldn't be billed until January 1st.
That is correct, and trying to be exact, thank you, Leanne. We wanted to make sure that we were as fair as we could to give folks time to plan for this new rental registration fee to come on board.
That's correct. So just as Sam was discussing, it was to get our patrol officers up to where we could be able to recruit them and retain them, was about 90,000. Same with the gate officers, about 79,000. We had new gate officers hired. This is both their salaries and their benefits. And at the end of 22, we were able to hire a new community standards officer. So by the end of 22, we had spent $526,000. We go into 2023. Our revenues were just shy of 1.2. Again, we continue with the competitive market wages. 171 for the patrol officers, 149 for the gate. We were able to hire some new patrol officers at a cost of 296, as well as continue with those gate officers. And the new community standards, so we spent just over $1 million. So the cumulative number, though, we're still in the red. We're still 383,000 deficit. Coming to 2024, these are the budgeted numbers. Obviously, the year is not even halfway over, but we'll still be at the end of this year, if these numbers hold true, still in a deficit of 442,000.
So we're spending everything we said we were going to spend in the way we said we were going to spend it on our patrol officers, our gate officers, our community standards employees, focused on the rental registration program, just like we told the board we would do back in May of 2022.
I just wanted to add a comment, or actually look for reinforcement. The Freedom of Information Act, Victoria, that request, when we reconciled that data, it was on a property by property basis, correct? That's been a question on Facebook or social media, that to what level of granularity, and I wanted to make sure we reinforced that we did look property by property, street by street, match things up, and that reconciliation is what you just presented, which I think is very important information for those that have been asking, for a while for it.
We did it by not only street address, but also Beaufort County property number. That R code that you have, we did that because we maintained those in our system and they did too. So with those, we were able to match them up.
Great, thank you.
We have any questions, comments? Anybody?
Yeah, I get a number of people who I interact with across the community that rent, having questions. You see it in social media, you see it elsewhere. And I think this is really helpful to show the cause and effect. The vibrancy of the community, the activity of the community is driven in a large part by all the guests that come into the rental properties. And I think if you look at our guest passes that are issued and the guest passes that come through the resort and what, we probably approach, Victoria, don't you think, about 100,000 passes? And you take that demand on the community, the traffic, the parking, the activities, the all of that is creating disproportionate demand upon the community against the residential property owners. So I think it's a really good policy, good program to be able to balance that level of demand that the rental community creates against creating some resources that help improve the quality of life. So I think the presentation goes really far to show what the logic was when this rental registration was implemented. So it's good to see that the loop being closed on the data.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the next topic.
David, before you, I'm sorry. I want to thank Victoria and Leanne for pushing us to do this. And just so the board's aware, the community's aware, we're also working on this exercise for our critical infrastructure dollars. And so I think anticipate our next regular board meeting, we'll have done a very similar exercise looking back on where our dollars have been spent based on the projects and the categories. And we've been making a presentation to the community in that regard as well. So again, trying to look back on what we told the community we were going to do 2 or 3 years ago and where those dollars are going, how they're being spent, the value the community is getting. Because as we move ahead, there are going to be other things we need to do to continue to make Sea Pines a premier community. We want the board and the community to have clear understanding of the dollars being spent in the way that the board has told us to spend them and on what they're being spent for. So I just wanted to mention that's an additional reconciliation of those things coming to the community as well.
Thank you. I think it's very important. I think it's important to our property owners in the community to understand and see this information. Next item is operation and special projects. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to start with a quick update from Six Oak Cemetery. We are pleased to announce the recent completion and opening of our expansion that we've named Azalea Terrace. It's about 1.3 acres in size. Had 825 azaleas that were planted and 18 palm trees and about a quarter mile of sidewalks, which allows access, really good access throughout the site. So we're pleased to announce this, and it's going to allow Six Oaks to meet the needs of the Sea Pines community, for some years in the future. Switching gears to the Forest Preserve, just like to reiterate what Jared and Russell had mentioned with the rainfall that we've had out there. In fact, in many areas of the Forest Preserve, it can't get any wetter. It can only get deeper. What we've seen is that the groundwater is the water table is exceptionally high for this time of year. And what that means is that when we get new rain, it just takes a long time for it to perk into the soil. So it's created some maintenance and some access issues that we're working around. So if the grass is a little bit long in some places, it's not because we haven't tried to cut it. It's just we need to wait for things to dry out before we're able to do so. We are excited to finally be getting the materials to have the wildflower field fence replaced. We've been waiting for the materials to be available for some time now. They've recently become available. So in the next weeks, we're expecting to see that wildflower field fence get replaced. And so we're really looking forward to doing that. We recently completed our annual fish stocking of catfish in Lake Joe. That's something that we do every year in the spring. It's there to promote kids fishing. So the fishing should be good. If you have any friends, grandkids that are in town, I'd encourage you to consider fishing in Lake Joe for catfish. With that recent stocking, the fishing should be pretty good. The wildflower field is kind of at the end of its annual cycle. There still are enough flowers if you're interested to go out there and take a look. It's not postcard spectacular, but the diversity of flowers that are blooming right now is actually pretty good. So I encourage you to get out there to do that. We had our last bird walk of the spring season this past Friday, the 17th. We have several volunteers that graciously host those. They're very popular. They almost immediately sell out, as this one did. But we will resume that program in September once things cool off and it's more pleasant to be outside and there's more bird activity. So keep an eye in the fall for the resumption of those tours. And then also I'd like to talk about our prescribed burning program. We've had another good year so far, and we really appreciate the community's patience and tolerance and grace with this program. In 2023, we were able to burn on 4 separate days, a total of 54 acres. And for 2024, year to date, we've been able to burn 47 acres on 6 different days, a total of 47 acres. As we continue to implement this program, this year has been exciting in that of the 47 acres that we've burned year to date, 34 of those, or the majority of those acres, were blocks or sub-blocks that were being reburned for the second time. So we're really excited about that. And the vegetative response has been very, very good. We're still not where we want to be. It's been 70 plus years since no fire has been introduced out there. And so it is a process, but we're seeing very encouraging results so far. So that concludes my report. Be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Well, I'll tell you, as a person who takes my grandkids fishing, always glad to know that it gets restocked. and I will not share our favorite fishing spots with the community. That I will keep secret. Okay, we'll move to the next thing. Safety, security, and transportation. Sam is going to give that report for Joe Count, who's away for today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, Joe has earned a little time off, spent some time with family, and I will do my best to give the community on the board some updated numbers and then try and answer any questions. If I can't answer them, we'll get them answered, get them back to you shortly. Let me start with e-bikes. I wanted to let the community know that we have placed signs now at all of our beach boardwalks coming into the community, letting folks know that e-bikes are restricted in Sea Pines. Through March 1st, we've had 89 encounters with e-bikes. And whenever we have an encounter, particularly with someone who is not a property owner, we have had 100% compliance of them leaving the community, or if they're a renter, then they are going back and taking the e-bike back to the house. So the patrol officers are having success when they run into e-bikes. It's just they're not at every point where every e-bike would be. So if you do see an e-bike, please feel free to call into dispatch, and they will try and get an officer out there if they're available to find the e-bike and let those folks know they're not allowed in Sea Pines. We've also installed a camera at Beach Walk 47, and that is the first beach walk coming in if you're walking south from Coligny. So that's where you get a lot of traffic there. And that camera is there to monitor what the folks coming in and off of that beach walk. And particularly if we can catch folks bringing electric bikes in early in the process, we will have an officer out there and available to them. Our dispatch can send an officer there to deal with that situation. And then when we have e-bikes that we see that are just parked somewhere, we have a process now where we put a covenant violation on the e-bike, letting the folk under the e-bike know that e-bike is in violation and it shouldn't be ridden in the community. And so I know Joe and his team are still working to add even more, even to refine this process even more in terms of dealing with e-bikes. As we get through the year, we'll learn more, we'll do more. But I wanted to give the board that update. Also, through January of this year, changing gears just a little bit, we've had 106 traffic violation tickets issued through this point in May. This point in May last year, we had 71, but also we've issued this year 188 warnings. And through May, we've issued 100 of this time last year, we issued 149 warnings. So, our patrol folks are out there and they are patrolling the streets. So the volume of activity has gone up. Probably the most interaction that I have from property owners are related to issues with safety and security, is folks complaining about traffic in their neighborhoods. And Joe and his team have taken a very methodical but direct approach. If we have issues with traffic in a particular neighborhood, they're going to go out there and do their best to get folks to slow down and obey the laws. Again, the goal is always compliance. We prefer not to be in the enforcement business, but sometimes somebody has to have a ticket written, and Joe's team doesn't have a problem writing it. And then the last thing I wanted to let the community know is through the month of April, I think last month we gave the combined totals for both gates of traffic going through the gates. For March, we had 368,000 cars go through the gates. For April, we had 379,000 cars go through the gates. So 11,000 more cars. And we're going to keep providing that number to the community, and we'll specific breakdowns on the gates in the future, which lanes and those kind of things. But just know the volume of traffic is picking up, and I'm sure it will continue through June, July, and August. So happy to try and answer any questions the board may have, or there's specific information I didn't provide that you need. I'll send that on to Joe and get it to you. Yes.
I just had a comment. I'm happy to see the sign when you come into the gate, the electronic sign stating e-bikes are not allowed in Sea Pines. One comment would be that there are other electronic pedestrian equipment like scooters that are also covered under that policy, I believe. I mean, we may want to rotate e-bike with e-scooter and other, just to kind of get it all encompassing. Because in the neighborhoods that I traverse, the scooters are actually more prevalent than the electronic bikes. And I don't think the children of the folks using them have any idea they're not
That
allowed.
makes sense. That's a very good point. And Stephanie, I'm going to ask you, our communications director, to help Joe and I come up with some language for that, and just a friendly reminder for scooters and things of that as well.
Yes, sir, noted.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go to the next item, a task force reports. The first one is communications. Jim, you ready?
Yeah, thank you. Just to give a couple of, we have a task force of the board that we're looking to create an appropriate, vibrant communications guidebook on how we're going to interact across social media, the email, the website, various use of video, et cetera. And I think the work that Stephanie's been doing to reformat the weekly email with a 75+% open rate, the linkages back to the sources of truth about different policies, different programs. And then we're working on ways that we can interject ourselves, so to speak, into like social media and other places when there starts to be conversation and misinformation or people's opinion about how things are. We want to have the linkages come back to the source of truth within the CSA website, within the CSA newsletters. So it's an exciting process that we're trying to reformat how we communicate, increase the level of communication, and take a position to be proactive about the policies and practices that are going on around Sea Pines within the CSA community. So it's hopefully the community is going to feel the differences in terms of our efforts to try to keep the community informed and to interject what the real facts are about various situations.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Comments? This is a very important thing in trying to disseminate information in a manner that the community will be able to easily read and understand, and to do it on a dedicated item by item so that you'll have the information. It takes time to get some of this together and out, but it's what we're doing. So thank you, Jim. The next one is on the battery operated blowers. So Larry, you want to give us an update?
Yes, thank you, David. The task force was created to gather the facts necessary to determine when and how the board might impose an electric long leaf blower requirement on the community at some point in the future, and if that was a good idea. We've started developing some cost bases for what it would cost under current costs for the landscapers to move to all electric, and we've also started working with one of the largest landscape companies, which has already started going all electric, to get to the benefit of their experiences. What we're now in the process of doing is interviewing a variety of other landscapers to determine what they see as their challenges. Interestingly, based on the number of commercial tags that we've provided this year to landscape companies, there are over 150 landscaping companies doing business in Sea Pines. That was surprising to us. And equally surprising was that over 60% of those have one truck working in Sea Pines, and over 70% have two or less, which means that we have a preponderance of the smaller companies. And we want to be sensitive to those in terms of what they see the challenges to be if we were to go to an all-electric requirement. What we're finding is one of the biggest challenges is finding places to recharge the batteries, because while large companies probably have the ability to set up charging stations, some of the smaller companies probably don't, or will take more time to do that. And so we're interviewing a variety of those now. My hope is that we will be able to bring to the board within the next couple of months a report on what we're found in terms of cost of buying new blowers, and also the cost of maintaining electric blowers, so that we can develop a proposal for imposing an electric blower only requirement in Sea Pines that is fair to a sufficient number of landscapers, if not all of them, on a transitional basis. That's my report.
Thank you. Anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll talk about gate signage. Cliff, you want to take over?
Yeah, and just before I get to that, I'll just give a quick update on the gate itself. As we know, as a part of this task force, there's an ultimate goal to just increase throughput or expedite passage through the gate, and there's multiple facets to doing that. One's physical improvements, and that really is going to be somewhat subsequent and in coordination with any future improvements in planning for Greenwood and the circle itself. But sort of independent of that is the technological improvements. And so we, Ann Esposito has been tremendous in helping us navigate the production of an RFI that will go out to the market and seek software solutions to expedite that passage. We've circulated that document amongst all stakeholders and have gotten pretty close to having it in a final draft form. And the plan is to go out to the market with that document, seeking these solutions in the next couple of weeks, and then ultimately working towards proposals for design work on and performing these solutions later in the summer. So all that's working up to our deadline that we set for later in the fall, making a recommendation for these software implementations to the board. Now, in a more regarding the signage for leading up to the gate along Greenwood, we did research on more permanent SCDOT-like signs. And it does seem that most of those, especially if mast arms are involved, can take up to 6 to 12 months for production. And so we immediately, while we'll continue to study those options, we started focusing more on short-term solutions. And short-term solutions would be just improvements to the signage that are roadside as you drive down Greenwood. And I think our primary findings, initial findings are, we've got a lot of signs competing with each other on Greenwood. Just on the incoming lane, there are 7 CSA signs that are directional based, and they all, those 7 signs are delivering 6 different messages that we need to get across. So one thing is we're looking at how can we simplify that information and get it more streamlined and more consistent. So, drivers aren't having to read so much, and probably more than they can read. The signs, not only is it a lot of information we're putting out there, but there's a lot of competition. There's a dozen or more monument signs that are representing businesses along this drive. And then plus your normal DOT signage for directional and safety signage. So I haven't counted all the signs, but it's a lot. And so we are looking at a design or a plan that could simplify that. And then secondly to that, we're also looking into what type of sign is going to be the most effective. We've got our standard CSA signage in place, but there's a question of whether or not reflective signage might grab someone's attention a little bit better. And so that's what that arm of the task force is working on right now, are planning and options and the pricing associated with those for review by the rest of the group.
In addition to that, you talk about the temporary, more immediate, short-term signs.
And sorry, Mr. Chairman, that last piece was really towards that. I think the looking at some reflective signage and simplifying the number of signs would be a short-term solution. I think we're talking about once we get a handle on the cost and really get buy-in from stakeholders on what would be more effective. I think we're weeks from implementing a plan like that.
Okay. As opposed to the 6 months or more for the more permanent sign.
That's right.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? Okay. Then we'll go to traffic issue overall. Tom?
All right, good morning. Thank you, David. So the traffic task force was formed to be proactive on the congestion and safe ingress and egress from Sea Pines, where we've had a lot of congestion and we're getting accidents. This was formed primarily because we didn't see anyone necessarily focusing on a longer term solution for Sea Pine Circle. And primary situation is that our residents and tourists and all have a hard time entering the Sea Pine Circle. And so where we've come to is to look at a more robust picture of this, and we've now come to the terms of calling it the South Island Traffic Circle. So it is more than Sea Pine Circle itself. It is Greenwood Avenue, it is Pope and Palmetto Bay as they all come into that circle that will have to be reconfigured. So, and this affects more than just Sea Pines, as I think David mentioned earlier. This affects really the total south end of the island, the economic development, the tourism, the residents that live there. So the circle actually becomes somewhat of a toll gate for that south end of the island. Pretty important. So we're raising the awareness on the circle by having this South Island Traffic Circle project. And so in the task force, we have 5 specific tasks underway. I'm going to talk about 3 today. The first one is that we need to create in all of the governmental entities and ourselves an awareness of the South Island Traffic Circle. It's not just the Sea Pine Circle. And it involves the county, it involves the town, it involves the state. So we are leading an effort to actually define this project in engineering terms, in terms of cost, and in terms of timetable, so that we all are talking about the same project. That, believe it or not, does not exist at this point in time. So that is one of our major tasks. I think you can imagine if you look at the Gateway Corridor project that's been going on for several years, you'll realize the challenge in trying to get all of us on the same page for a traffic engineering project. Very important that we manage that. Secondarily, then, there is a specific piece, and that is the Greenwood redesign, reconfiguration, such that we eliminate congestion, conflict points, and allow for a much better ingress and egress to the actual Sea Pines traffic circle, as well as our gate. And as Cliff talked, the gate project is well underway. And again, I want to put a shout out to Ann Esposito and her work on putting together this request for information so that we can look at all technologies available into the future that might help us move traffic more effectively into our neighborhood, as well as working with the other entities on the other end and getting traffic into the circle. So we are working with the same firm that the town is using. We've all are using Kimley Horn to design together the South Island Traffic Circle project. We hope to get some first pass designs for Greenwood next month, June, and then we'll start to look at those and proceed to fine tune them. The third task that's underway that I want to talk about is actual funding. So it's always wonderful to have projects, engineering, traffic projects, and to talk about them, but they're just a plan until they're funded. They're not reality. So concurrently with planning and doing the engineering, it's very important to work on how are we going to pay for this. At the current time, there are several options. The state has money. It's a state highway. Town feels they might be able to pass perhaps a bond issue to make money, bring money available. The key one that is probably ahead of us right now is a proposed tax referendum, county 1% tax referendum that would continue the current tax that we're paying, but that ends this year. So it's a penny tax. And in that, we would provide funds for the South Island traffic circle. So we are working with the county specifically to put verbiage in there that would provide funds specifically designated to the South Island traffic circle. And have those funds available when the engineering is complete for the project. So that is basically the summary of the work we're doing. Overall, I think Cliff alluded to it. We've made a commitment from the task force that in October, we would present a plan, including the gate and including the South Island traffic circle and our piece, Greenwood, for review by the full board. And I think at this point, we're on schedule for that. It is attainable, but it'll take a lot of energy, continued energy. And with that, take any questions that the board may have. Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, as you can imagine, considering all of the governmental entities and parties that are involved, there are conversations going on between and amidst them and us, and like negotiating the truce, we like to keep things below the surface, if you don't mind. I'm not trying to be secretive, but some things are better not discussed until they are determined and can be announced. You just have to trust that the people negotiating whatever truce there is working in the best interest of the community, and for just quite frankly, can't put things in the open because that may kill some of the conversation going on. It's just the way that things like this work, and so just so you know, there are things that are in the work. Okay, with that, we go to financial report on the financial statement, December 31, 2023. Victoria?
Okay, I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to start off with the balance sheet. This is taken directly from our audited financial statements, which are posted on our website in full. There's a significant increase from last year at this time in investments and in cash. A lot of that has to do with, we were able to collect a lot more of the 2024 assessments prior to the end of 2023 as compared to prior year. That was about 4.1 million that we collected in the month of November and December. And you'll see that number, it shows up in our liability section because it is actually a liability to us until the year turns over. And then down at the fund balances, we have just over 22 million in fund balances, but actually only 5 million of that is, quote, disposable. The rest is designated or simply unspendable. I'm going to move over to the income statement. What you'll see that increase in the residential assessments as well as the critical infrastructure that has to do with the CPI increase. Our gate revenues are up year over year. You all recall that we increased the daily commercial passes effective January 1, 2023. So that is reflected in there. And then the new revenue source, the rental registration, which we've talked about. And then the increases in the personnel is being reflected there in that safety and security expenditure. And we spent just about 700,000 more in 2023 on major projects. The rest of the statement or the other statements that I included in the package just includes more detailed changes in those fund balances as well as the statement of tax value.
So let me jump in on the good governance reporting. The finance committee has a small group called the audit committee that meets annually with the auditor and receives the report that is actually included in your material. The auditors met with us on April 25th and reported that they had a very good experience with Victoria and her team, and we thanked the crew for that. There were no significant issues or disagreements with the auditors, which is always a good thing. There are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls. Again, another item that we look for. It is important to know that the audit opinion was issued, and it was issued on May 6th, right before the annual meeting. And as Victoria mentioned, you can find the entire audited report online. We do this reporting from the auditors annually, and the audit committee then reports to the finance committee. I would like to move that the December 31st, 2023 financial statements be accepted by the board as presented here today.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, that
We have the March
then
financial statements.
brings us to the March financial statement.
I would do in your packet. Again, I'm gonna be quite brief. You'll see a big jump this year in our investments. It went from 14 million at the end of the 23, and it's now 20.6 million. And that money, we simply, Sam and I moved a lot of those funds into the investment portfolio so that they made sure they were insured. As you know, anything over 250 in any financial institution is uninsured, so we did want to protect that money. In fact, we have started drawing down on those investments as Russell's project goes forward. I mentioned earlier about the receivables that we're doing, that suspension of past privileges really does show to be effective. Moving down into the liabilities, the only thing of note is there's a large retainage payable. That's just we hold 10% of any major construction costs until the end of the projects. The capital improvements fund balance is now at 7.8. As we continue to spend those monies, that fund balance will come down. The next one is again just the detail showing those changes in the fund balances. And for the income statement, the bottom line is we have a excess of revenues over expenditures of just over 9 million, which is right about where we were this time last year. One thing to note is that the daily gate passes are down over budget as well as over last year. And so I wanted to take a look at that and figure out why that was happening. So I did an analysis that shows that there was a 14% increase in the commercial annual decals. So a lot of these commercial entities are deciding that it's more cost effective for them to buy an annual decal and come in and out as many times as they need versus paying on a daily basis. So that did prove to be true. Some of the other variances on between budget and actual, I addressed them right on the face of the income statement to be more efficient. So we have spent 1.3 of major projects where we're anticipating almost 6 by the end of the year. Does anyone have any questions?
I just want to make a statement that no one should get excited that we have $9 million of excess of revenues over expenses at this point in the year, because all of the revenue has been recognized, but we've only been a quarter through the projects and the major repairs and replacements. So that is a seasonal driven expense as the expenditures are made throughout the year. So we will be catching up considerably as the projects start up again in the fall.
I will say I signed a very significant check yesterday, but that will knock down a big chunk of that.
Yeah, good.
Any comments, questions from the board?
And to that point, we expense all the big projects versus some capital fund balance approach. So your point though is that when we start paying for South Sea Pines Drive and all that, that goes against these numbers. That's not a
Yes.
balance sheet. Okay, that's an income statement issue. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's the accounting convention for this type of organization, so we do expense all those items.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we need.
I'd like to make a motion for the board to accept the financial statements for the first quarter, March 31st, 2024, as presented.
Is there a second? Second by Andy. Okay. Any discussion? Comments? If none, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Any opposed? Same sign. Unanimous. Thank you. The last two items we have electronically approved an encroachment agreement at 20 Marchview Drive, and also another one. And there are resolutions to ratify the approval of those encroachments. One, as I said, is on 20 Marchview Drive. The other is on 63 Bainard Grove Road. On the first resolution, in approving the ratification of the approval of the encroachment agreement on 20 March Drive. Somebody make a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The next one is, as I said, is the ratification of approval of the, or disapproval of the encroachment agreement on 63 Bainard Cove Road. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second, Tom, all in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed, raise your hand. These have already been electronically voted on by the board members, so the community knows. It's not that there's a lack of discussion. This is just to ratify that approval. These have each been studied first by staff, recommended by staff, then goes to the board for an opportunity to look at and vote electronically before we come to the meeting so that we know where we're going. At this stage, there's no other business. I'm going to, before I entertain a motion to adjourn, Stephanie, you still on?
I am, yes.
And we still have the same two questions?
That's correct. No
Okay.
new questions have been submitted.
So after we adjourn, if you'll hold on, don't take a recess or anything, we'll address those two questions. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay. We have a question and a comment from Leslie Casey regarding South Beach Pool. Says she went down there today and there was no work repairing the pool. Why hasn't it started? Well, you know, they have to get architectural improvement permits from the town and all of that, and before the contractors can start work, and that's the stage they're at in doing that. Then the second part, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I know Tim Stearns is on the line. He's COO of South Beach Marine, Soft Dog Cafe. If he wants to add, I will say that is part of the pool is part of a larger project, a redevelopment project that they will be doing soon. And those notices have gone out that they've been approved to do that. It's a very exciting project, but that is coming up.
Steve, you want to add anything to that?
Tim.
I said Steve, I'm sorry. I guess not. Okay. The next part of that question is, they went to Harbortown Pool and there was no parking. And why are all the tennis players parking there? And at 9:30, there was only 6 people at the pool and families with kids started to come on. Where should they park with all their kids' toys? Not good. I don't know what to tell you about that. The parking is limited in the Harbortown area. It's limited in a lot of places. And it's simply very difficult. Tennis players are parking there because I assume they're playing tennis and pickleball goes on there too.
Well, there's a tennis tournament going on for the last 3 days, so I don't know how.
Right.
How.
Yeah,
That's probably explained.
there is, if this occurred in the last 3 days, that ended Sunday, I
There
think.
should be, I think it continued through yesterday.
Yesterday.
And there was additional parking available on the artillery a lot,
No.
travel a lot.
Okay,
There's almost 1,000 players. It was a very, very big, very successful tournament.
And it's throughout the island.
okay.
Right, Don?
Yes, throughout the
Yeah.
island.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for elucidating that. Next is a comment from Steve Passmore regarding the speed radar sign on Greenwood Drive. Just want to say how much I love the new speed sign on Greenwood Drive. I won't read the next sentence because you admit to guilt, and I don't want you to be found guilty of violating the speed limit. But you said, I do find myself purposely checking my speed limit when approaching this new sign so I can get that big smiley face. I love it. That's our entire questions, comments following the board meeting. I hope the community can see that there's a lot going on in CSA, excuse me, and that we're tending to business. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. Bear with us, help us. Let's keep a positive attitude, and we'll continue progressing. I thank you. Everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.